Welcome to tonight's Monday guest speaker. Before we get going, my name is David York. I am the tech employer specialist for Central Kentucky, and I do a lot of remote roles. If you're ever interested in anything like that, let me know. Be happy to answer your questions or field any concerns or anything like that you might have. And once you're more toward the end of the program, then we can talk about maybe setting you up with some opportunities. Before we actually get to the speaker, though, I do have a couple of announcements, just some other upcoming guest speakers and things going on. Next week, we have a discussion on how to study and learn from Jared Mueller and Amanda Gerhart, both employees here at CodeU. It's actually a pretty interesting topic. They're discussing a article or a book that they read. Pretty good. It was pretty excellent stuff. Yeah, so that will be exciting. The next after that will be Kirby Stormont and mitigating cyber threats in the financial sector. Pretty interesting stuff. We actually have a lot of stuff on security coming up, because after that, we have Charles Kaiser, who is a mentor here, talking about black hat hacking, which is pretty interesting, how people get into companies and it's actually going to be a live demo. That one's going to be pretty cool too. So hope you tune in to all of them. But for tonight, we are joined by Mark Mastroianni. He is an Agile coach, and he's a senior consultant with E-gineering. They're a technology consulting firm out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And just as a quick reminder, if you have any questions or anything like that, please type them in the Q&A section. Keeps it really easy for us to keep track of them. And I'll let Mark take it away.
Hello, Kentuckiana. How are you guys doing? We're going to expand the region just a little bit from just Code Kentucky and Code Louisville to your neighbors to the north here in Indianapolis as well. Hi, everyone. It's great to be back here with you. I was able to provide this content a few months back, and it's really great to be back with all of you again. For just super brief, who am I and why am I the guy who gets to present this material to you? I got the opportunity to shift my career from design engineering, being a hands-on doer and maker in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And I was right there at the dawn of a new day in 2004 when Agile Manifesto was written and published and disseminated around the country and then around the world, late 90s, early 2000s specifically. I was at a startup in Chicago where we used extreme programming, one of the very first frameworks built off of Agile principles. So what you're going to get today is some theory, but a lot of context and a lot of examples. Some are metaphors and some are going to be actual examples from product development challenges that I've faced in my career. So in the 20 years since I was initially introduced to Agile principles through the extreme programming framework, I've used every flavor you can think of. I've used formal frameworks, but for the most part, what I live by oftentimes, and you're going to see this throughout your life. Once you start seeing Agile, you start seeing it everywhere. You start seeing that organizing an event can be Agile, and once you see it, you start to notice it. And then, if you can apply it at work, it actually gives you flexibility for real life situations. I'll end with this before we dive into the content. I was a formal product development project management professional in engineering prior to learning these Agile principles. And what's so beneficial from those formal project management frameworks is if you know definitively what the end goal is and you know definitively the building blocks to get there, formal project management, what's sometimes referred to as waterfall method, is just fine. It's not inferior to Agile, but what is often the case, especially in software engineering product development, is the unknowns. There are known unknowns when you kick off and get started, but there are a heck of a lot of unknown unknowns. And what Agile allows you to do is roll with the punches, just kind of stay on your feet while getting smacked in the face by surprises as they relate to product development risks, dependencies, and blockers. Okay? So if there's ever a term that I'm moving too fast, if we need to double back and define something, this is a content we give our E-gineers. So E-gineering is a 24-year-old software consulting firm, just like David mentioned, based here in Indianapolis, but we have virtual employees across the country now, and our clients remember the work that we've done for them and are now across the country as well. I'm here because one of our favorite things to do as E-gineers is to freely share what we've learned. We just don't know how this information is going to benefit you, me, us, our organizations down the road. That's okay. I'm here to freely share my experiences and a little bit about some terminology that will be of good use to you. David also mentioned to me that you just learned recently about the software development lifecycle, principles of Agile. So I'll try to weave a good blanket here and make sure that I point to software development lifecycle topics when and how possible. Okay. David's going to watch the chat. So if you have questions and I'm not seeing a hand up or a comment, don't worry. David's going to grab my attention if you have a question. Okay. All right, let's rip. So I have a tab of information and I'm going to share it. So I'm going to use the term Agile as the most broad term, the highest level, most generic. It's almost like AI, right? AI is not a thing, it's a subject matter. And Scrum is one way that Agile can be applied. It's one of the more common methods of applying Agile principles. It's certainly not the only one. So what is this? What is Agile? So it's to respond to change, right? It's the response to the known unknowns. You make assumptions. Those assumptions are either valid or invalid. As you discover the truth as your product is being developed, Agile is a great way to stay focused on an end goal while also having some bumps in the road, okay? It's a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in the uncertain and turbulent environment. Agile Manifesto is something I mentioned in the early 2000s. The Agile word definitely comes up in athletics very frequently. Agile was selected because it's very often considered the opposite of rigid. If something is agile, it's like a vehicle with a good suspension versus a go-kart that has none at all. That's a good metaphor too. So you want a good suspension when you're going to hit a pothole because you don't expect to hit potholes, but they do occur, and a good suspension helps you to still carry forward and reach your destination. We want to represent the adaptiveness and response to change, which is so important to their approach. So it's really about how we think. And I just kind of think of it as a trip to the grocery store is another good metaphor. You don't really need an agile way of thinking if you're going to the grocery store for milk, unless they're out of milk. But if you're going to the grocery store to as a step in a process to plan a banquet, right? When you're planning the banquet, there's an end date, there's an audience, there's dietary restrictions, there's chefs and waiters and waitresses and bus people who are all involved in something much more complex. So Agile principles become much more valuable when you're planning a banquet, like a complex software engineering product development initiative, rather than a quick trip to the grocery store for milk, okay? Now, what about Scrum? What's that all about? So in very early days of Agile, after the Agile Manifesto was rolled out to the world. Another article came out with a short time after the Agile Manifesto, where the terminology from within the sport of rugby was brought into play. It does look chaotic and weird and different from a US perspective. We don't play rugby that often. I did play rugby in college, but it's just not that frequent or not that common. But the Scrum is a collaboration to get the ball and to move the ball in the direction of your touchdown. Okay. Next, yes, it is a little bit about rugby, but more about team participation towards a common goal. You need to utilize the strengths of the people, of every teammate. I am 5'8", 175, so you just don't put me on the front line of a scrum. You just don't. You just need a lineman, a big dude or woman in your scrum to initially give that first push. And then there's the scrum quarter towards the back who receives the ball and can move the ball quickly forward. So you utilize the talents of everyone on your team to the best ability towards one common goal. Not everyone understands the technology stack. Not everyone understands the customer needs. Not everyone has a quality mindset. We're going to touch on that quite frequently as it relates to the software development lifecycle. You need quality focused folks, because someone with a quality focus just thinks differently about how to break stuff than the rest of us do. Okay. But we all have the same goal. The goal of the quality person is not to ultimately break it. It's to make sure the customer doesn't harm themselves when the product is being used. All right. So yeah, let's meet your team. I referred to a few of these roles when it came to functional roles, like someone who's very deep and knowledgeable on the technology stack. That's an important role. But there's also very specific roles as they relate to technical cross-functional teams. These are not common in every organization, but they're so common that they're worth a minute or two of our time here today. These are not, some frameworks call these accountabilities. The reason they're not roles in some frameworks is because sometimes you're in a startup where one individual can have multiple accountabilities. Ideally, it is good to have a tech lead, a product owner, and a scrum master, along with a development team. Okay, those are good to have as separate roles and responsibilities in a cross-functional team. Okay, let's flip this over. We're going to go one at a time here, and we're going to I may or may not use the names of these individuals. Some of these examples will carry forward with Steve, the Scrum Master, Paula, the product owner, and some more of our development teammates as well. One thing to think about when you're thinking about a Scrum Master, it could be an Agile coach if you're not using Scrum specifically. You do need an Agile coach whose job it is to coordinate, to make sure that time boxes are being honored, that priorities are being set, that everyone is collaborating and contributing. It's good to have a conductor of the orchestra, even though that conductor doesn't hold an instrument. It's very useful to have someone who's that coordinator, who's not also one of these other roles, but it can work where that Scrum Master, that Agile coach, is also one of these other roles. Okay, Paula, the product owner, is a very unique role. We want to spend a few seconds on this. A product owner is the voice of the customer, okay? Some people call it a business analyst or voice of the business, or but most often in software product development and in Agile and Scrum, a product owner owns the debate between two approaches, not the how of two approaches, but the why and the when, okay? So think of Paula, the product owner, as the owner of the why, the voice of the customer, who always will ultimately win when two pieces of work take equivalent time and only one of those two can be done in this time increment. Paula's going to decide which of those two gets done first. It's part of radical prioritization that comes up within Agile. It's almost as if some Agile implementations like Kanban looks at a day in the life of a team and determines how much work can the entire team do in that brief glimpse of 8 collaboration hours between a cross-functional team. When you start increasing the size of that time increment to a week or 2 weeks or a month, the role of that product owner gets even more important to take what's called the backlog of work, the work to be done, and ruthlessly prioritize the work to be done from most important to least important, okay? If that role is not present, sometimes the team must be direct with the business and ask for a voice of the customer to break those kinds of ties. The rest of the team, depending on your framework, most frameworks say 6 to 8 is ideal for any one particular team with one particular goal. If you have more than 6, 7, 8 people, the interdependencies, the conflicts in code base and roles and responsibilities starts to get muddy, and you become less efficient. Split the team into 2. It's better to have 2 teams of 5 than 1 team of 10, in my opinion, from personal experience. Okay. Next, let's talk about the rest of the team. Okay. I keep clicking on the image of the next section instead of the next section button itself. Okay. So here we are, more food, right? Who's hungry? All right. What is value? All right. This is essential in the ruthless prioritization of that backlog. Value is what the customer believes is important. And the team must know what that is through the filter of the product owner. The product owner, a really great product owner, can articulate what is value to the end user of the software or the product to be created. Okay? Each client will have a specific definition of what is value, but ultimately it is why we're on this team. That is the work to be done and the goal to be attained in each time increment for that team. I also state here, ask your team how the value is defined and ask the product owner how the end user, the customer, experiences that value from this team. So in the example of the banquet, value is the execution of a good banquet, a delighted guests with no one getting sick from undercooked food. Okay, there's like a guardrail on the delight associated to the banquet. Okay, Scrum teams, what do I say here, can see our value as it is being created. That's what's so wonderful about an Agile approach. We don't just take a infrastructure first and infrastructure to perfection, then starting to deliver value vertical. There are times when infrastructure is required in order to deliver value, but we like to find a tiny piece of value and deliver it the earliest we possibly can. I'm on a team right now with E-gineering. We are working with a client that has banking software in the nonprofit space, and we want to give them one working feature even before the project begins. We want to deliver value with the proposal itself. That's how we want to demonstrate what they can expect for the rest of the project ahead. Okay. So I said here, let's take a typical Kanban style. So Kanban is just an Americanized version of a Japanese word. It's just on a visual board. If you think of a Kanban board, you're going from left to right, work to be done, all the way to the right-hand side, the work that's done. And every little piece that you can possibly think of goes on a card. And that is a line, a word, hello world, shows up on a website. That's a card. The work behind the scenes to enable the word to appear on the website can be 3 more cards. Okay. And so the work to be done starts on the left. The more uncertain it might be, it might need to be decoupled from some of those other uncertainties by allowing the Scrum Master to just get into those dependencies and unblock the team. But if something is to do, it is well defined with no clear dependencies. The team can estimate its size and effort and move it across the board. It's typically assigned to an individual. There may be helpers to allow that one card to become successful left to right across the board, but a single owner does have great value. If I'm the Scrum Master and I need to know why this card is stuck in the doing column for more than a couple days beyond its original estimate of effort, then I need to go to an individual who's owned that card, who has taken ownership. I don't assign a name to the card. I go to the owner because the owner has volunteered their name to that card based on their subject matter expertise and confidence in the description of the work to be done. That's just one style. It's one of those simplest ways of implementing Agile is through a Kanban board. Many people do this with paper. I actually started in 2004 with boards like this with cards everywhere. We weren't sure the order, but we started with the product owner defining urgency from most to least urgent. We put them in sequential order on the far left side. We made sure the definition was clear and obvious to everyone who was estimating. We estimated the effort, and we started volunteering for work in the far left column. And then we started moving cards left to right. What's unique about Kanban is that it doesn't have a strict view of time. It does allow teams to think of work in the smallest possible increments and shows it visually, right? That's another Agile attribute to this methodology. Okay, let's go a little further, right? So if Kanban is a way of planning the main course of the banquet, right? What if we get even more complex? Let's go a little further where we need to coordinate more complexity. In my personal opinion, you go Scrum or scaled Agile is even more advanced if your complexity of the project you're working on increases, right? Scrum boards give you more predictability over larger time increments as complexity increases, okay? I said here, like Kanban, you expect to break things down to the smallest possible increment on a card. You want to take that card from left to right, from start to finish. Once you start something, another Agile principle, you want to finish what you've started. Don't commit to something else. There is great research that shows we as adults are more effective and more results, positive results, when we're doing fewer things at a time. I'm not here to say one thing at a time. I'm here to say fewer things. And so flow theory is part of both Kanban and Scrum. However, unlike Kanban, sprints start to look at time increments because you're building more complexity, more features, more diverse talent on your team, more team interdependencies on a larger in a larger functional group. Okay, so we're gonna add some more information here. I'll say here colors. may denote the feature that the card is associated to. Sometimes these cards start to become stories, okay? So let's think of this board. This is now a Scrum board, which is different than a Kanban board, right? It does communicate some new columns have appeared, right? And some colors have appeared. There may be teammates whose subject matter expertise are front end. There might be teammates whose subject matter expertise is back end. There may be teammates whose subject matter expertise and interest fall to a particular feature that the product owner has deemed critical in the backlog, highest urgency. So all of these can be denoted from left to right and go across the board. Again, flow theory does come into play. If you're the product owner and the Scrum Master, you want to see daily movement left to right. If there is stagnation beyond the estimate of the teammate who owns the card, there is a dependency, an unknown unknown. Someone is stuck and they might not even know how to articulate the stuckness of it. But again, it's visual, but it's more complex than Kanban. There are organizations that run Scrumban. So without getting too weird about it, there are people who might have simple organizations, simple teams, a single feature that their team is associated to. They want to have some idea of multiple sprints, but their goal is so focused, it's a hybrid between Kanban and Scrum. Okay, so if you've heard that weird word Scrumban, it's people who are taking multiple frameworks and starting to use them as needed, and that's okay. We're okay with mashups in Agile. All right, what is refinement? This is fundamental to Kanban, Scrum, Agile, scaled Agile. Refinement is the process that we use to understand clearly what each card definition of done is. It seems like a stupid play on words. Definition of done. Done is when it's done. No. Again, going back to the banquet, done for chicken is 165 degrees, right? There's a definition of done when it comes to various aspects of the front end. It's got to have certain font, color, and readability and accessibility. There is a variety of ways that the back end can be searchable and discoverable. Some being protected and copyrighted, and some being more free and loose to use the data as needed, okay? So refinement is about a team of activity, okay, to make sure the ideal here is that everyone on the team has a common understanding. They might not be able to articulate it in the exact same words, but they can all raise their hand and say, if you gave me this card, I know how to achieve the definition of done for that card. If anyone is unsure, that's okay. The goal for refinement is to get to the point where anyone and everyone on the team could be assigned to that card if needed. All right. So let's take a little bit further dive in refinement here. If there's a story in the team backlog that I don't understand technically, how do I perform the development to deliver the value? Then there's a tech lead on the team who I can go to for first level how questions. What's most common is that there's more than one way to accomplish a particular end definition of done. It could be with a couple different languages, a couple different methodologies, a couple different design architectural katas, design archetypes. So the how can be part of early team norms that the team has decided and agreed upon at an early stage. We're all going to use this particular architectural template. We're all going to follow this particular design template. Fall back to that first. If there's still how questions, that's still okay. Internally, we get to debate it in the refinement process. What if, right? There's a story in the backlog. I don't understand why it's there. Like, why is this so important, Mr. and Mrs. Product Owner, Pamela, the product owner? Why? And you're using jargon in this story card, right? For this particular story. Define this jargon for me. Well, as the voice of the customer, anyone on the team can go to Paula, the product owner, and say, explain this in greater detail, please, so that everyone on the team has a common understanding. And jargon can actually go to a separate common file for the whole team to utilize and reference as needed. Last but not least, in the refinement process, one more what if example. If a story in the team backlog that I don't understand how it relates in relation to the rest of these things, and I think there's a dependency on a third-party software, another team in our organization, there's a conflict between the process that we've decided to use and this next story card in the team's backlog, what do I do then? Well, Steve, the Scrum Master, should resolve the dependencies that are blocking the team from saying with confidence, yes, we know exactly what to do and how to do it for this card, or any pieces of the puzzle that need to come from another API endpoint, another service, a third party. That should be identified in that refinement process as well, if it's not defined by the tech lead and the card author at the onset, at the inception of the card in the first place. Okay, so in general, we should all as a team feel comfortable moving forward, not bulldozed, right? Not by pushed forward by the momentum and the goals and the deadlines of this team that we're on. We should know what this means and know the effort it takes to get there. Okay, let's keep going. Sizing the work. Okay, so let's just pause for a moment. We have been a team now for a little period of time. We've worked together to make sure that the definition on these story cards is understood by everyone on the team, the how and the why and the when it comes to sequence, identified any dependencies that may have occurred. What's next? Once I feel confident and I can raise my hand as a teammate that this is a card I could work on if I received it, then we as a team, we size this thing. So this is, you might have seen Story Poker, you may have seen a variety of other new tools, tips and techniques, Fire Poker. There's a variety of different tools now available to size an effort. There's some cool things, especially for virtual teams, that you can click your vote without seeing anyone else's vote. It's pretty important here, folks, to realize your size, the size and effort of this work that we're talking about at this moment should come from your experiences. Imagine for a moment that you're about to receive this card. You should feel comfortable with the size you're giving it. Okay, now we're going to have a fancy Italian word. We used Fibonacci sequence. Why is that? In the Fibonacci sequence, typically we see a lot of 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. And these numbers are done in that way because a 1 plus a 2 is a 3. A 3 plus a 2 is a 5. It's meant to say a 3 is double the technical effort of a 2. Even though 3 is the next sequential number, don't think of it that way. Think of it as the combined effort of the two numbers before it. It's double the effort of a 2. A 5 is double the effort of a 3. An 8 is double the effort of a 5. That's the way most coaches coach this sequencing and effort. What you typically find, it doesn't really matter what number the team ultimately agree on. Two things are critical that the team agrees. Okay, the team should agree by the end of debate what the number we land on is. The second thing is the team should have the same general understanding of the time and effort of a 2, right? There's a funny exercise where instead of estimating based on weight, you're going to take the Fibonacci numbers and you take all these animals that are in the zoo. And the chicken doesn't often appear in a zoo. I get it. So just suspend disbelief for a second. The chicken is the smallest of all the animals being compared. So if the team can agree that the smallest animal is a 1, right? Then the team agrees that a gorilla is a 20 and that a horse is half a gorilla. And even though horses and gorillas are close to the same weight, let's not get too deep into that particular metaphor. It ultimately doesn't matter as long as the team has an understanding of what effort means to that team based on each Fibonacci number. This also gets to 2 things. There's a commitment part of it. And then I mentioned earlier, when teams are really crushing it, they can say definitively in a 2-week cycle, we as a team can do 50 points of value, right? Or 30 or 14, right? And then I love the comments. I'm checking them on the corner of my eye. So the fun part of these numbers is that a 50 to team rocket is different than a 50 from team Gonzo. It just doesn't matter, right? What matters is that on a week-to-week, sprint-to-sprint basis, a 50 to team Gonzo is the same as a 50 to team Gonzo the next sprint. That's what matters. And that everyone on the team can come to a general understanding, appreciation, and consensus that it's the card that's being discussed is of a particular size and effort. Okay. I know we spent a couple extra minutes on that, and I think it's not because it is warranted. It has great value. If a team gets stuck, it's either lack of guts to speak up at refinement or being overvoted by extroverts at estimation sessions. A good Scrum Master will make sure that introverts don't get bulldozed by extroverts at an estimation session. It's one of the biggest tricks with this entire mechanism. It assumes everyone is of equal honesty, participation in a group setting. That's another reason why 6 is better than 10 and 10 is better than 20, because the smaller the group, honesty is easier for a lot of us. Okay. The trick about these numbers, and I already mentioned this a moment ago, it's really about consensus. It's really about agreement, and it's really about common understanding. Okay. Over the span of time, a 3 will be a 3 will be a 3. It gets better over time. Yeah, if you're being mandated, sorry, I did see that comment. If your team leader is mandating that every story be a 3, there's been some research and some writing about this, that it means if the card was not written well, it balloons beyond a certain point of effort. Okay, there's something valid in that premise. All cards should be broken down to the simplest, completest form to get it to a done status. Super good. But there's no such thing as uniformity. There's back-end database structures and schema that are completely different and unique than an automated and highly visually complex front end. They're just very different from each other. So it's very difficult to mandate that everything be exactly uniformly the same size. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. We'll pause here in just another slide or two unless we want to take a pause here.
We do
David?
have one question, actually.
Good.
So when Johnny actually asked the question, when you split a team into two, do you keep one Agile coach, Scrum Master, PM, or do you assign one to each team?
Great question. I'm going to dodge it. It depends. I've been that guy. Okay. So I've been the guy that split my team into two, and I stayed with both teams for a period of time because I understood what both teams were, the dynamics of each team, the interdependencies, the strengths and weaknesses, the team norms. And it was valuable for me to stay with both of them while we finished a particular increment, which is a sequence of sprints that is planned together by big, large, scaled Agile organizations, okay? But in my personal opinion, I think the best teams function in this 4, 5, 6 teammate roles, one product owner, one Scrum Master, Agile coach. That's the ideal. It doesn't always happen. I've most frequently been spread over 2 teams on average throughout the last 20 years of using Agile principles and frameworks. Okay? All right. But it actually relates to this next part, okay? I've refined all the things to know what done is, the definition of done. We've come together to plan. We know how many things we can do in a finite period of time. We get one last chance to stamp our approval as a team on the plan that we've constructed or veto it. Okay? And it's at the end of sprint planning. We've said of the 10 things we've agreed to in this 2-week time increment, most of them are in the 1, 2, 3, 5 point range each. Over a 2-week span, the 6 of us feel good about this 40 points worth of work. How do we feel about it, team? All right, so this is another anonymous vote. It's called a fist of 5 confidence vote. It's one of many ways of either endorsing and committing to the work that we've just discussed, or saying there was something that we missed. I feel uncomfortable, and I think we should go back. The way I see this is like 0, no way, is like, I would bet my paycheck we will fail. Like, that's a 0. And a 5 is like, dude, I would bet my paycheck we will succeed with the plan we just constructed. I actually like when the team consensus is in the 4 range. The reason is this should be hard. Like, we're walking into an industry that is complex, it's interdependent, there's nuances, subtleties, and difficulties. Like, it shouldn't be so easy that I'm giving a 5 every sprint. We may have underplanned. Like, we may actually want to add some things to feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's my preference, but I always go with the team. If the whole team says, yes, we should move forward, but I'm feeling 4 about it, I'm okay with that. If the whole team says it's a 5, but if you added one more thing, I'd go to a 0, I'm also okay with that too. Okay. So we're just going to flip this. And yeah, it's saying the same thing. A typical score on average is 4 to 4.5, because there's some skeptics that'll be in the room. Everyone has a general differences in their risk tolerance and aversion to risky things. It's okay. It's okay that the team doesn't always land on a consensus of 5. The team can finish early and grab stuff from the backlog 1 or 2 days before the end of a sprint. You do that too often, and then your product owner tells their business leaders, this team needs to, challenge themselves a little bit more. All right. We have a very short video here, and we're almost done. Okay, very short video. This is what happens daily. Okay, so I've done a plan. I know what I'm supposed to work on. I'm supposed to say 3 things: what I'm doing today, what I did yesterday, what I'm doing today, and am I blocked at all? So let's take a moment and just watch this short video.
Hello and welcome to Knowledge Hut. In today's video, we will be talking about the daily Scrum meeting, one of the events conducted in the Scrum framework. As the name suggests, the daily Scrum is held every day. This meeting occurs during the start of the working day. The reason behind holding the meeting at the beginning of the day is that it helps to set up the context for the work, which is to be done during the whole day. The development team uses the daily Scrum to inspect progress towards the sprint goal and to inspect how progress is trending toward completing the work in the sprint backlog. It is a best practice to hold the meeting every day at the same place and at the same time. Who attends the daily Scrum? According to the Scrum Guide, the development team is required to attend the daily Scrum meeting. It is optional for the Scrum Master and the product owner to attend the meeting. Even if they attend it, they should do it as observers and not as participants. The time allotted to the daily Scrum meeting is 15 minutes. Now, 15 minutes may seem very short for the event, but if the meeting is carried out systematically, then this much time is sufficient enough. Keeping the meeting time bound helps to keep the discussion quick, focused, and relevant. During the daily Scrum, each team member should focus on answering the following 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? Are there any impediments in your way? By answering these 3 questions, the team gains an understanding of what work has already been done and what work is remaining to be done. The Scrum Master makes sure that the development team conducts the meeting, but it is a responsibility for the development team to conduct it every day. The benefits of the daily Scrum are improved communication, elimination of other meetings, identification of impediments, promotion of quick decision-making, and the improvement of the team's level of knowledge. The daily Scrum can also be a stand-up meeting. It has been seen that when every participant is standing up, a lot of time is saved from being wasted. During every daily Scrum, the team members should keep in mind that this team meeting is not for updating the status of work in progress. Rather, it is a meeting in which team members make commitments to each other. After the completion of the daily Scrum, the development team often meet immediately for detailed discussions or to adapt or replan the rest of the sprint's work. So this was all about the daily Scrum. We hope that you understood how it's conducted.
All right. So I hope that was helpful. There's a couple things that may differ from organization to organization. It might not be in the morning. Morning to India is middle of the night in the US. You might have a hybrid team that's across the globe. It is ideal to be 15 minutes. It is ideal to be at the same time each day, and it's also ideal to be in the same place. I loved when my teams were all co-located. I got great energy from that. I'm an extrovert. I loved being in the same room as brilliant people doing difficult tasks. But we're in 2024, and there might be hybrid teams that are somewhat in the same room and some remote. The remote hack here below is my last statement. Please ensure that you're logged in, capable of quality communication. Since this is a team session, I believe it's important for us to see each other's eyes. There's something human about being on camera and you being able to see the video of my mouth moving at the same time you're hearing my audio. There is something more than just hearing my voice. Okay? Great. There's a little more here, but it's kind of icing on the cake. Again, not too much with, can you tell I'm hungry? At the end of the sprint, we do document what we did, what we could be doing better next time, because continuous improvement is essential to software development lifecycle. Agile, Scrum, Scaled Agile, all of these things require us to not repeat the insanity of the previous sprint, to constantly challenge each other with respect and improve. All right. That's what the review and the retrospective looks quantitatively at how we did. And then retrospective can be a combination of qualitative and quantitative metrics to hold each other accountable with respect inside the team. All right. Very good. So I've got some questions that I typically give to folks who are taking this, but as a class. But I'll turn it over to you folks. Any questions, concerns? And I'll go to David to curate my questions here.
Yeah, so the most recent question was Jonathan asking if they can get a link to the site that's being used for this demonstration.
We created this class as an internal class for our company. I'd love to see if I can export it as like a PDF or a PowerPoint. I'll take the action item to get back to Code Kentucky on that.
And if it's possible, I'll attach it to all the recording and things afterwards. At the moment, there aren't any other questions, though.
The good news about the content is it's just an assembly of public knowledge with some sprinkling and stitching together from my experience. So we have the recording of the session that you can refer back to, right, David? But other than that,
you got it.
There's nothing proprietary or unique about what I presented today.
Yeah, this recording will actually be on YouTube in a day or two once we get it processed.
Other questions? I have thick skin and I'm a continuous improvement junkie. So anything I can do better, let us know or let David know, please. I can't wait to see what you guys work on and what you guys develop and deliver. It's gonna be awesome.
Just got another question from Jonathan. How do you overcome radical differences with things like fist of five voting? So like one teammate is giving a 0 and another one is giving a 5.
Yeah, you give a minute to each person to say, you know, where they're coming from and what their concerns might be. And there's a way to address those concerns outside of the room, outside of the planning room. If you just can't come to a common understanding or comfort around known and acknowledged risks, there's a way to what's called keep it in the backlog until those concerns have been addressed, or to state on which date a dependency will be unlocked. So for example, if something's being asked to begin on Monday the 23rd, but we know we're not getting a delivery from another team that makes one of these cards essential, practical and doable until the 26th, well, we can hold that card that's dependent on the 26th until the day of delivery, and then it can be added to the sprint after the sprint start date. I love when there's disagreement. It gives very diverse points of view and experiences an opportunity to share. And typically for a Scrum Master, it's often a dependency that didn't get addressed or is on the horizon and not yet in the control of the team. So I love it. Okay. Anything else urgent?
We do have another question from Michael. Assuming that nothing is perfect, have there been issues or problems that come up from using Agile or using it incorrectly?
Absolutely. Yeah, what typically occurs is multiple teams are working on multiple components of the same product and not done in a vertical slice way. I'll be very brief on this. It's a complex topic and I'm going to oversimplify it. I'm running the banquet and the kitchen has a certain number of ovens and stovetops. And I'm telling the taster and the deliverer of the food out to the floor that they can only watch the main courses. They can't watch the desserts. Like, there are things that can be done structurally and stupidly that prohibit teams from working in parallel with good constructive flow. The most typical mistake that's made is that teams running in parallel have functional or horizontal slice specialties. So you have a back-end team delivering to a business logic team, delivering to a front-end team, delivering to a quality team. Boo. That's waterfall masquerading as agile, okay? The best implementation, if multiple teams are necessary to deliver something complex, is that every team has the skills necessary to deliver an entire piece of value. Back-end people, infrastructure, middle, front-end, quality, Scrum Master, product owner. That's a great team. It's a vertical slice of value. I can do one interaction button on one screen, and it goes all the way down to the database to get the information, and it comes all the way back up to the website to deliver confirmation to the user. Like, textbook Agile in a multi-team scenario is full stack team at the team level.
We probably have time for one more question if anybody has any, a brief one that is.
There's no bad questions, only bad code. No, I'm just teasing.
One question was, are a lot of Scrum Master jobs remote?
I'll be vague again, and I apologize. It depends. There are some great organizations that require that their Scrum Masters be on site with their teams, that their teams are so important to the delivery of excellence in their products that the Scrum Master must see and interact in person with their teams. But I would say over the last 4 years since pandemic, it is more, it's 50-50. There's more hybrid Scrum Masters now than ever. And it's about, I would say probably 50-50, about 50% on site with your team so that you can interact in person in 3 dimensions. And another 50% is hybrid.
Well, if there's not really anything else, that actually puts us directly at time. So yeah, thanks everybody for showing up. Thank you, Mark, for the fantastic talk as always. Mark will doubtless be back. He's spoken for us many times and probably will continue to if he sees fit to. So look forward to having him back. But really appreciate everybody. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.